Yep, sure is! Okay, I guess maybe I could talk about why for a couple minutes, and even talk about some of the things that just in general make Torchlight 2 a good game and worth your $20 or your 15 if you buy it with 3 friends and get a fall pack. Um, the game just gets a lot of stuff right that Diablo 3 didn't. I think in a lot of people actually, in hindsight, we're kind of dissatisfied with Diablo 3 in terms of, well, not even in hindsight necessarily. I know it was certainly dissatisfying to a lot of people who are sort of old school hardcore fans of Diablo for a variety of different reasons, depending on who you ask. But for me, well, I wouldn't say I was exactly disappointed, since I've never been a huge fan of Diablo, but it failed to impress me because I felt like the game had no substance. This is more or less what I covered in my review of the game. You know, it didn't have a good storyline, a good RPG kind of storyline. It didn't really have much of a sense of, RPG character progression, no interesting choices you really had to make there. And it didn't really have any kind of gameplay for the most part. It was... I mean, that's not 100% accurate. Obviously, it had gameplay, but that gameplay that was there was very, very dull. You know, you sort of held down left mouse button. You had skills and abilities and stuff like that, but you mostly just kind of face rolled the cube. I don't know how to put this correctly. Let me put it this way: the game was insufferably easy for the most part, except for when it was impossibly difficult. And when it was impossibly difficult, the solution wasn't figure out a new strategy, play the game better. That wasn't the answer. It was rarely even that your build was wrong, although you could, have good builds and bad builds. I'll talk a bit more about character progression and that shit in a minute, because that's another thing this game does a hell of a lot better than Diablo 3, in my opinion. Hang on a second. But, yeah, the solution wasn't better playing. It was usually better gear, sometimes level up more, and occasionally that you had to equip different abilities into your ability slots, but not really that frequently. And aside from that, oh god. Aside from that, what I wanted to say about the character progression was that your choices in Diablo 3, and choices in terms of your character build, what skills and abilities you were going to... Well, you only chose skills. You didn't have, ability points like this that you level up when you level up. They were inconsequential because you could change things. They had no weight to them. You could always try a different setup, which gave you sort of a nice flexibility in one way, but in another way, it made the choices lack weight. It made them disinteresting in a lot of ways, and I sort of talked about this as a strength of the game because of that flexibility that it allowed you when I was reviewing Diablo 3, but after, playing the game more, getting up to Inferno, not finishing Inferno, but playing a fair bit of it, and just... I don't know, I just sort of started to feel that, first of all, at least on the higher difficulty, what abilities you choose isn't that important. I mean, there are sort of... it's pretty obvious what are good choices and what are bad choices. You don't have to think about it much. And if you fuck something up, you can just change your mind anyway. I don't know. I didn't like that. It gave the game no real sense of actual fucking significance or weight to your choices, as I already said. In Torchlight 2, you don't have that. Once you choose a skill or ability point when you level up, you're pretty much stuck with it. You can respec your last 3 skill points that you've spent in the skill tree here. There's a guy who allows you to change the last 3 points you've spent, but for the most part, you are stuck with the choices you made. You've got to do some planning, and there's actually some weight to your decisions, and that intrinsically, immediately makes those choices more interesting to me because they actually have some significance, some importance, and you actually have to have a plan for your build from the get-go, otherwise you're not going to make, the most efficient possible character, not even close, and if you fuck things up, you fuck things up, and, you pretty much, that character's screwed now, which I like. A lot of people see that kind of thing as being like, overly punishing for no reason, stuff like that, but it's not for no reason. The reason is that it gives way to your decisions. And then, in terms of actual gameplay, what I found is, as you went up the difficulties in Diablo 3, right, the game began off as trivially easy, unless you were, like, completely fucking brain dead. The first playthrough on normal was not difficult, aside from maybe a couple bosses, might have taken you a couple tries, but for the most part, it was trivially easy the first time through. And then the game got progressively harder, but as I said, if something was too hard, if you couldn't beat an area, the solution was almost always that you needed better gear, not that you needed better playing. Actually, probably the middle portions of the game were the best, where you had, because in the sort of middle few difficulties, you had the most room for actually, you know, giving yourself an edge by a skill, whereas Inferno is pretty much all about gear, and normal it's pretty much impossible to fuck you up. In this game, you can, first of all, you can play on any difficulty you want right from the get-go. It's not some stupid fucking thing where the game is really short, but you're expected to play through the same game 4 times as you level up on the different difficulties. That's fucking stupid as well, by the way. I was really mad about that. The difficulties are actually harder, and what it comes down to is, on normal, you can, and particularly on, there's even a lower difficulty in normal called casual, but my impression of normal was that even if you do a pretty inefficient bad build, you know, even if you do a build that isn't that good, you don't plan ahead, you will be able to get through the game, experience, you know, all of the different dungeons, the fucking challenges of the game, and experience the storyline and all that shit. So, it's not like the game being punishing in that way that I mentioned earlier means that you are screwed and will never be able to pass the game if you don't fucking look up builds online, or at least spend some time, you know, planning out beforehand what you're going to do. That's not the case at all. You can get through normal, it seems like, without having to do that. On higher difficulties, however, it becomes, instead of it just being about gear or your levels, since you just start in you always begin at level 1. If like the enemies are always level 1, stuff like that, it's just the difficulties are actually higher difficulties, not we leveled up all the enemies. It's hard to, well, it shouldn't be hard to explain, but relative to Diablo 3, it's different. So basically, when you increase the difficulty in this game, it actually means that you need better playing and you need better builds. You need to make better decisions about how you're going to build your character. And that is interesting. That is a game mechanic. That is something where skill and decision-making is involved, and it actually, you know, there's actually some satisfaction to that, to, you know, figuring out a good build, to becoming better at playing your build and playing your kit class so that you can overcome these more challenging challenges. Whereas, to me, anyway, there's no satisfaction in just fucking, yeah, I found better loot, so now I can pass that challenge I couldn't pass before. I mean, certainly that's an aspect of RPGs, is the idea of collecting loot, leveling up your character, that kind of thing. But in Diablo 3, that's all the game is. There's no other interesting aspect of the game aside from the loot collecting. And even that, it's not like the loot is like interesting, crazy, exciting shit enough to make that actually a really exciting aspect of the game. You know, I mean, in Borderlands 2, for example, or just in Borderlands in general, you actually legitimately do find some kind of cool loot that changes the way you play the game, that has interesting or fun effects, stuff like that. And that's okay. Aside from that, I mean, Borderlands obviously does have gameplay, but, you know, aside from that, the loot-based aspect is okay. Diablo 3, it's not like that. It's just, this is better. This is slightly better also than the last thing that was better. Whereas in this game, you actually play the fucking game, on higher difficulties especially, and I don't know, for some reason, I'm just the kind of gamer that likes to actually play video games. I know that might sound weird, but that's just what I'm into, guys. I'm not really big on the whole not having to play the video games that I'm playing thing. It's just not my style. So, I mean, aside from that, in terms of, you know, Torchlight 2 actually being a game based around gameplay, actually having some choices about them that are, you know, interesting, there's a whole shitload, a plethora of other ways, if you will, to be slightly more elegant, in which this game is better than Diablo 3. I mean, the storyline, once again, isn't really the focus, and it's not amazing, but I'd say that it's, so far, it seemed a little bit less hackneyed than Diablo 3's. To be honest, I haven't really particularly cared about the storyline, but at least I wasn't eternally facepalming about how fucking stupid the storyline is the entire way through. which is kind of what happened to me in the Diablo 3. The storyline was awful. Absolutely just, holy shit, terrible. I mean, beyond the level of just not being that good, it was something special, and not in a good way. Holy crap. I'm not gonna end up using this anyway. Use this, not gonna use this. The fuck? Oh. Son of a bitch. Whatever. Yeah, I aside from that, even as well, I mean, the storyline, not a big deal, really, but there's even more things. For example, Diablo 3 had better graphics, no doubt, better presentation. However, I will note that, as I mentioned in my review, I believe, in Diablo 3, I didn't really feel that the visual style suited the kind of game they were making, the sort of atmosphere of the story and the world and stuff like that. Torchlight 2 doesn't have that issue. The graphics are, you know, inferior generally, but at least they seem somewhat more suitable to me. It seems like a more sort of lighthearted game, so I don't mind the very cartoony graphics in Torchlight 2 so much, since it's not trying to be grimdark at any point. It's not supposed to be at all that kind of serious. What else? Alright, the online. I think this is probably the biggest thing, aside from the gameplay itself. Aside from some connectivity issues me and my buddies were having on the first night of release, we haven't had any problems since then getting online and playing together. The online game in this game is flawless, and more importantly, you don't have to be online if you don't want to use any of the online features. I can't fucking believe it. It makes me so unhappy that Diablo 3, that games in general, are doing this fucking always online bullshit when they're not a multiplayer game, just as some stupid form of DRM. I mean, it was even worse in Diablo 3, because even if you were playing by yourself, it wasn't just that you had to log in, it was sending data from the server, and you would fucking lag in single player. You would get network lag in a single player game. I mean, what the fuck is that? That's fucking bullshit. It shouldn't be acceptable. Torchlight 2, you can play single player, online, or on a LAN. You have all the options you would want, all the options you would expect to have in a game like this, instead of it forcing you into this fucking always activated online connectivity bullshit. God damn, I probably should have entitled this video, Why Diablo 3 Made Me So Frickin' Mad. Because, I mean, as I mentioned in that video, I've never been a fan of Diablo exactly. It's not my favorite genre of games in the world. But, I think, you know, Torchlight 2 is a game in the genre that I do enjoy. There's actually gameplay here, there are interesting choices. It's not a bad game. In fact, if you like games like this, if you like this kind of hack and slash, top-down action RPG, sort of loot-based kind of game, buy Torchlight 2. Don't fucking... If you didn't buy Diablo 3, congratulations, you've saved some money that you better spend elsewhere. And, I mean, this game's only $20 as well. And from what I can tell, from what I've read, it seems like it's a hell of a lot longer, with a hell of a lot more quests and content than Diablo 3 had at a full retail price. Diablo 3, when it comes down to it, if you wanted to beat the game on Inferno, sure, you had to grind to fuckery. You had to play through the game 4 times. The last one was an ever-suffering pain grind of hatred to get the gear you needed to beat the fucking bullshit mobs. That, I mean, it wasn't even about player skill. Sure, okay. So, I mean, maybe if you wanted to finish it on Inferno, there was a lot of gameplay in Diablo 3. But ultimately, you had an 8 to 10 hour campaign in a role-playing game. Because, I mean, really, come on, are you seriously going to count doing the exact same fucking thing 3 times over with slightly harder enemies as being part of, you know, counting towards the level of content that came with... No. No. That's bullshit. I don't know for certain how long this game is, I will state. I haven't finished it. But from what I've read, I get the impression that it'll actually take a reasonable amount of time to get to the end of this one. So, I mean, there's that, too. There's just fucking... Guys, if you're still playing Diablo 3, please stop. Go play Torchlight 2 instead. It's just better. It's just fucking better. Holy shit, it's better. I need to get out of here. It reminds me more of the older Diablo games, which I didn't hate the way... I mean, I wasn't a fan, as I said, but I didn't hate them the way I hated Diablo 3. And just fucking... just... Torchlight 2, guys. It's better than Diablo 3. If you like this kind of game, go and buy it. It's fun. Until next time, Triple T Cat, done being real mad.